She's like, it's user error. All right, go. All right, this overview is about our Vision 2020, and I want to, this slide is a review of what we've already been with you all before, but for the sake of recentering as well as for the general public, we want to remind everyone, and it was great to hear that our mission is alive and well. Lots of folks quoted our mission tonight. You've quoted our mission. Our profile is alive and well. And a great district always grounds its day-to-day activity in terms of its aspirational visions, and that's what this is. And so our mission is written at the top, and our profile is the student-facing version of that mission. So if our idea is to say, what do we want our students to become, we have to ground in that. Now, you still have to do day-to-day activities, and so we got to say, what's our work? We've heard a lot of presentations today about the data that we'll collect and how do we know we're moving the needle. Jamie is a great example. We just finished that. And so in order to do that, we've created what Jimmy earlier in her color-coded slide called our community-based accountability system. And that has 7 pillars. Those are like the categories in which we will start to assess how we're making the profile real. Now, the next thing we'll do is we ask a variety of key questions as we're collecting data that helps us to measure that. Now, one of the things that we know is that we wrote that mission back in 2008, and it's still alive and well, but context changes over time. In 2008, if I remember correctly, iPads weren't around yet, and iPhones were just getting rolling. And so lots of things change. And so every 5 years or so, we have to reestablish the context to say within our vision and our profile, what's our strategic lens for the context now? And so back in 2015, maybe a couple years ago, we did a big community-wide push to say, what do we need to focus on for the next 5 years? And that is what we call Vision 2020. And we have 4 strategic lens areas that we're focusing on. One's communication, the second one is belonging and equity, the third one is resources and relationships, and the last one is social and emotional learning. Now, as we look at what we do from those lenses, as well as all the other 7 pillars, we will document that in our district improvement plan, which you guys got to see, all 85 pages of it, in the board book, that says these are within each pillar, these are the actions we'll take. And likewise, in our campus improvement plans, also are divided by pillars. And that's where the rubber meets the road about actions to see if what we're going to do to move the needle. Then we assess that, and then continuous improvement, we come back to see how it went. And so that's grounding. Now, if I will advance the next slide, in terms of just that strategic lens of those 4 goal areas from Vision 2020, we started last year was our first year of putting in action steps into our district improvement plan. This is our second year, so we have some carryovers from last year. We have some new ones that Jimmy's going to tell you a little bit more about. But I just want to remind everybody that mental health concierge, that was one of the goals from our Vision 2020, and you saw a report about that today. That was hitting our resources, relationships, and SEL. It's in our pillar number 6. Likewise, we talked about student discrimination last year. I revamped some of the ways we're doing something to make us more transparent and clear for kids and parents. That was in the area of communication and belonging, and so on. And so this is a list of a variety of things that are in our district improvement plan that came out of that strategic lens and those 4 goals. Now, what Jimmy's going to do is take a deeper dive into some of the specific ones that came out of the equity work, but it's really important to say that the equity committee, or whatever it's called, the council work, was grounded in our 4 strategic vision goals that we set 2 years ago. So I think I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy now.
So as we talk about our equity work, I think it's important that it stays grounded in the specific goal for this work. And Frank talked about aspirational. Our goal is that each Alamo Heights student experiences a deep degree of belonging and graduates with hope, with choices, and with opportunities. We'll talk about the specific recommendations for this year, but putting it in context, when we talk about equity work, it has to be grounded in our local community. And Alamo Heights is a very unique community in that our size is unique. We're not a small, tiny rural district, and we're certainly not a north side with 101,000 students. We're right below 5,000 students. And those 5,000 students, we have a stable enrollment. Our mobility rate is very low. We're at 6%. Loosely defined, that means 94% of the students who are here this year will be here next year. Compared to in Texas, that's 15%. And in Bexar County, Military City, it's 18%. So we have a very stable student enrollment. We're more diverse than people think, with 28 home languages, and we're a changing community. Our bilingual student enrollment is increasing, as well as our number of military-connected families. So because our equity work has to be grounded in our unique community, our definition of equity is also unique to us, and we've written it up there, but it is a broad door. Like, if we want every student to graduate with hope, with opportunities and choices, then we have to address all of the barriers that inhibit that level of graduation. The equity work, as Frank just mentioned, came out of Strategic Lens and that goal for belonging, but it was also a charge that you all put to us for the formation of an equity council to address a framework to identify, measure, and eliminate bias, prejudice, unlawful discrimination, and anything that would inhibit student achievement, experiences, and inclusion. I was reading kind of between the window panes. So we did form an equity council. We had a broad stakeholder involvement from parents, students, administrators, teachers, and counselors. We worked all last year looking at specific data. We came together May 7th and 8th, and there's some pictures up there of our group coming together, and we reviewed that data and emerged with a series of recommendations. So I am pleased to put before you tonight the 6 recommendations that we're going to take action on for next year. And these include, we prioritize the recommendation into 3 areas. Knowing the year that we're coming off of, we prioritize recommendations that address learning loss. One of them deals with fidelity to response to intervention, and really ensuring that if we say a student is going to have 30 sessions of 45 minutes of dyslexia, that we are indeed providing 30 sessions of 45 minutes of dyslexia. And that we also look at the effectiveness of the programs and tools that we're using to ensure that they're garnering the results that we expect and need. Our second area of focus is on communication. And the first one is identify gaps in district communication to inform parents of the financial, language, and staff supports available so that students can fully participate in all of the experiences and activities that we have. You all, this came up tonight as we had some of those trips presented, and this is just making sure families know we do have scholarships. You can't apply for what you don't even know exists. So step one is making sure that we do a better job of centering and grounding all of that at almost a one-stop shop so that all of that is together in one place to communicate with families. The last area of focus is professional learning for teachers. Before we roll anything out with students, we have to make sure we've trained our staff. And so this is providing professional development for our staff so that they are well poised to develop effective lessons in advisory and class meeting that establish a sense of trust and a sense of belonging with our students. So those are our 3 focus areas and the 6 areas we will take action on for next year.
Tag team. So, to bring it all back to a circle, we've got our big picture vision, and so all the boots on the ground work that you saw in the district improvement plan and campus improvement plan is going to cycle back, and then Jimmy has that nice calendar that you guys will be updated throughout the year. Done.
Just very quickly, what impresses me most about this is we did all of this despite all the challenges of last year. And that's incredible. We kept ourselves moving forward. So thank you for your work.
So, 2 quick things. Well, I guess it's 3. I love the focus on continuous improvement. So many times people don't do something because they want to be perfect, right? And it just stops you from moving. So Jay mentioned it earlier about some comments. I love the focus on continuous improvement. We're never going to be perfect, so set perfection aside and just keep moving. I really appreciate how you define equity. What
topics.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much. All right, our last item. Consideration, and it's an easy one. Consideration of the 2021-2022 AHISD extracurricular code.
We're gonna do it like at graduation when the last kid's name starts coming across, everybody starts clapping.
Bring us home.
All right, as a way of reminder to both of this group as well as the general public, for years we've had what we call an extracurricular code for students who are in extracurricular activities. And in the old days you called it 24-hour code because it was a good shorthand to say that if you're going to volunteer to be part of an extracurricular activity, that there's a standard of leadership that you represent, which means that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you should be doing various things that you seem common sense, right? Don't break laws, don't use drugs and alcohol, you're underage, that kind of stuff. And so we've had this for a long time. Now, in the summer, in late June of this past summer, when I was about to go on vacation, the Supreme Court issued a ruling called the Mahoney case, something like that, right? In which they established that a student's use of social media outside of the school day constitutes protected speech under the First Amendment. Therefore, codes like ours cannot be regulate that kind of speech. And so based on that, we consulted with our attorney, and in a committee meeting last week, we talked through the various things to consider. And so the big change in this is to clarify that that kind of speech is in fact protected, and so this does not go into that anymore. That's number one. Number two, it's really important for the general public to note, however, that there are still statutory areas where students' use of social media is against the law. Cyberbullying, for example, that's not protected free speech. Sexting and harassment, that is not protected free speech. So those are things we still want to remind kids are important to stay away from. So that's the one big change you'll see in this. The second thing is not as noticeable, but I think it's important to note, is that we wrote this, or I don't know which order I want to say this. So we, about a few years ago, we added in very explicit language saying that mistreatment and bullying is clearly a violation of the extracurricular code. It wasn't in there before, and we felt the need to put it in. That's one fact. A second fact is that statute requires that we have an anonymous tip line for people to be able to say, hey, if I'm being bullied or if I know people are being bullied, I should be able to report that anonymously so it gets in and people can investigate that. We've actually had anonymous tip lines since 2008, way before the law passed. That's fact number two. Fact number three is that several years ago, because we had an anonymous tip line before it was required, it was being abused to turn in people for drinking and doing drugs and violating the extracurricular code in a way that was really hard to pin down because it was anonymous. And so several years ago, we said, hey, the anonymous tip line, don't use it to report extracurricular code violations. It's just way too hard to track down things like that. And we've had that posted both in this document as well as online for a long time. Through our partnership with the Davis Legacy Foundation, I have come to discover that a variety of parents as well as kids have misread our comment saying, hey, we don't use anonymous tips to explore this. They thought that meant we don't want you to report bullying, and so they thought it was a kind of counterproductive. And we didn't quite realize that, and I want to thank Davis Legacy Foundation for the partnership we have to bring that to my attention, and so we have clarified that in this. So that's a long walk to say that's the second major change in this. So I will ask for your consideration to adopt those changes going forward. Is needed. So, from what I recall of the question, it was that we clarified in committee meeting that other folks can have extra contracts, but those contracts don't supersede this. This supersedes that. So, right, yeah. So my clarification to all of the coaches and sponsors, I sent out an email early this week, is to say I gave them an overview of the change that the Supreme Court said. I told them that we changed this language, and I said if you have an extra contract or a team guide or something like that, team rules, make sure that it doesn't. If you talk about social media, you need to contact your administrator and work with me to make sure it's on the up and up. And I just, for example, talked to a coach yesterday and said, hey, I think I got something you need to talk about with you. So, yeah, good feedback. It was great feedback on it.
Any further questions? No? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the revisions to the 2021-2022 AHISTX curricular code? Clay, second. Brian, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Well done, Frank. Thank you. All right. Section 5 is our consent agenda. These are items that are considered routine by the board or have been previously reviewed and discussed in prior meetings, and that we therefore enact with one motion